Welcome to week 7. It's an important week because you have a presentation due. If you've not already done so, please read the announcement that I posted in our classroom. It has some good advice that I've started to share with classes to help them overcome some of the frustration with technology. As I mentioned in the announcement, the product itself is relatively straightforward, and the content, of course, produced by our students is high quality, but sometimes students get a little frustrated with the technology itself, between media space and Engage, and that's understandable. It's a relatively new system, so we have to be patient with ourselves as we work through those systems. So be patient, start early, use the tips that I give you, and if you run into challenges, call tech support. Those folks at tech support are there to help you, and I found that they're very helpful, very friendly, and always willing to help you to succeed. All right, some readings this week. I'll briefly touch on some of them and kind of share my thoughts for your consideration, starting with Adler's Negotiating Globally. I like the John F. Kennedy quote in which he said, "Let us not be blind to our differences, but let us also direct attention to our common interests and the means by which those differences can be resolved." I've had the pleasure of working with people from different cultures around the world, and there are some differences. Those are the things that we pick up on first. But within a very short period of time, if you keep an open mind, you'll find that our similarities are almost always more prevalent than our differences. And you can use those similarities to help build bridges, to overcome those gaps that there might be in the differences. That's true of any relationship, but it's certainly true in terms of our class for a multicultural relationship. So think about that in terms of business and how those differences can be overcome by focusing on similarities. Okay, another quote that I pulled from Adler was global businesses becoming the dominant form of business. We've seen this over the past several decades, global economy. And because these business negotiations happen from people or with people from different cultures, we find that the focus on the intercultural economics, the intercultural differences is becoming more prevalent. And Adler says that to succeed in such negotiations, business people need to know how to communicate with and influence members of cultures other than their own. So it's not enough to know your own culture, to understand and appreciate how you view things. It's helpful for you to view things through the eyes of others, including others from different cultures. Adler also gives us a little bit of information from Fisher and Urey, who proposed a principled approach to negotiating, and I'll share those briefly with you. Number one, separate the people from the problem. Focus on interest, not position. Insist on objective criteria, and invent options for mutual gain. In other words, try to see how both of you might benefit from that negotiation. I also encourage you to review Figure 9-1, that's found on page 228. This is a simplified version of when to negotiate, so you might find that helpful, not just for this course, but also life in general. All right, another reading we have this week is from Leung and Wong. They discuss the social pressures and team creativity in multicultural teams. The study reviews how cultural diversity creates culture identity and intercultural obstacles. Now, these obstacles can hinder sharing and integration among team members and hence team creativity. So think about that, especially if you're working in multicultural teams. Know that creativity could be hindered, but it could also be enhanced based upon the different values and worldviews that different cultures bring. So just be aware that there's two sides to that, just as there are in just about any situation. I also discuss the two types of cultural diversity that trigger different social processes in multicultural teams, and these two types are surface level and deep level. Now, when I teach diversity, which I do as part of some leadership courses, I share with my students, and I'll share with you as well, that surface level difference is pretty easy to see. And because it's pretty easy to see, it's usually pretty easy to overcome. It's easy to see as well as to compensate for. It's those deeper level diversity triggers that we may not even be aware of. And so read through that article, see what the authors find on that, and then use that for your own experiences to help communicate in terms of business or just your organization. In this reading, I found that Figure 1 was pretty good. It showed an overview of the socio-technical system and the framework for cultural diversity. So kind of an interesting figure. I've not seen that in other readings, so I pointed out to you for your own interest. All right, moving to Larker and Tyen, where they talk about models of corporate governance. One of the quotes I pulled was this: "In order for governance systems to be economically effective, they should decrease agency costs above and beyond the direct cost of compliance and the indirect cost on managerial decision making." All right, let me unpack this for you. You probably have certain rules, policies, procedures in place in your organization, and those are all fine. Just make sure that the compliance part of that, the governance part of that, actually have a positive return on investment. Sometimes organizations develop things all with the best of intentions, but the compliance factor far outweighs any benefit they're going to get. Okay, so make sure that you have those. It's good to review them over time and make sure that they're giving you a positive return on investment, and you're not just doing these governance or compliance steps in order to, because you've always done it that way, right? You want it to be done in order to affect positive return. All right, on page 21 of that Larker and Tyen reading, there's some questions there. Go through there, answer them, and answer them from a communication perspective. I think you'll gain some pretty good insights from that. All right, the final reading that I'll share with you this week is Seeger and Ulmer, written in 2003, and this is the explaining Enron. Now, most of you have probably heard about Enron. If you were like me, you didn't pay a whole lot of attention at the time. It wasn't until I started teaching this class some time back that I actually refreshed my memory about that case. And I like that this article analyzes the demise of Enron using principles of communication-based leadership. It's one of the reasons we chose this reading for this specific course. Some of the things that I'll share with you that I think were interesting is communicating appropriate values to create a moral climate. Maintaining adequate communication to be informed of organizational operations. When you read the article, you'll find why that's so important. And then maintaining openness to signs of problems. So 3 kind of takeaways from that article for me. The Enron case also highlights specific communication obligations of senior management. The authors suggest that Enron's demise was a consequence of a fundamental breakdown in communication-based responsibilities. Okay? So most of the media coverage of Enron didn't really focus on communication, but obviously the authors found that the communication-based leadership was one of the pitfalls in Enron that led to its demise. Well, that's what I wanted to share this week. As always, I'll remind you to stay ahead with all assignments, stay engaged in the discussion board, and most of all, enjoy this time of learning.